I want to sort of run through some bets I'm thinking about taking on the first round of the NFL this year. And we're gonna do a buy or sell segment. So are you buying this narrative or are you selling it?
Let's do
So
it.
let's sort of dig into the first one off the top. Kayvon Thibodeau under 4.5, the under the 4.5 picks. So my
Big play.
logic here is that I think that the Jets, I think that Saleh would love to have Thibodeau. I think that
Mhm.
the way they're building that team, I think it's something that he really values.
Yeah,
Sort of pressure there, and the talent I think is undeniable. So, are you buying that narrative or selling it?
definitely buying it. I think that Salah wouldn't even think about passing on KT.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's sort of for me. I just think that it's really a fit. I think beyond just being a fit, I think that the Jets sort of need that infusion of talent. The
Oh, yeah.
raw ability there can change the whole face of your defense so quickly.
I think that an underrated factor there is gonna be Bulky, with the Jaguars' first pick. Does he actually have that much beef with Harbaugh where he's not gonna take Hutchinson? That would be probably the biggest determining factor because if Hutch goes 1, I'm pretty sure KT doesn't pass 2.
My next sort of big picture narrative, are you buying or selling Malik Willis as first QB taken? Right now it's minus 140 at a lot of these books. And my case here is that I just think that everyone is buying this Josh Allen narrative where you take this raw talent and you turn him into a real player. And you, even if he
Mhm.
is raw and he can't really read the field, as we've heard so many scouts sort of say here, I think that so many of these teams are looking at the way he runs the ball, that undeniable arm talent, and saying to themselves, like, with some coaching, I can turn that guy into a stud.
I'll put it this way, he should be the first off the board, but the question is, who's gonna be drafting a quarterback first? And even insiders in the NFL don't know. This is the weirdest quarterback here because the Panthers are the big question, and there's so many people who are probably going to get fired if they end up missing on that, and
Yeah.
the one thing they don't have is the luxury of time. Malik Willis needs a little bit of time to develop, so Kenny Pickett, as much as I hate to say it, I would probably buy him as the first quarterback off the board, even though he would be not even close to mine.
Awesome. I love that because I think I hadn't thought about it from that perspective because we're thinking a lot of like these guys are going to have longer shelf lives. They're
Yeah.
thinking of these guys as project quarterbacks, but you're right. Some of these guys who are drafting near the top of the order, they don't have that shelf life. They're like, we need to
Yeah.
win games now, or we will not have a job anymore. This was the third sort of bet that I was looking at was
Mhm.
over 5.5 wide receivers taken in the first round. And
Oh,
my case here is that this was an incredibly weird offseason where a lot of these
yeah.
teams that we typically think of as sort of wide receiver factories, big, high powered offenses, lost some wide receiver talent. And
Mhm.
there are also teams where they're kind of looking for that next tier of wide receiver talent. And on top of that, we've seen what some of these first round wide receivers over the last several years can do. They're immediate
Yeah.
difference makers. Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle. These are guys who are elevating your offense immediately
Mhm.
upon stepping on the field. So
Yep.
I was just running through some of the teams. I'm looking at the Niners, the Jets, the Packers, the Chiefs, the Falcons, the Eagles, the Giants, the Patriots, the Cowboys, the Lions, and the Chargers. I'm looking at
Mhm.
those teams, and all I need is 6 of them to take a quarterback, and I'm hitting on this bet. So, are you
Yep.
buying or selling over 5.5 first round wide receivers?
I'm selling for this reason. I think that those teams that have picks are willing to wait to the second round because there's a lot of teams saying that we're overvaluing this wide receiver class. And there are positions of more scarcity, offensive tackle being one of them, where as well as being 5 quarterbacks possibly worth a first round pick, where you could have teams trade back. And Detroit has pick 34, Jacksonville has pick 33, where if you want to get somebody, you can get them at that spot too.
I love that. I think that that's a totally fair estimation. I think a lot of the hype around this wide receiver class, and I'm falling for it myself, is that a lot of these teams like sort of need an infusion of talent. But I'm a
Mhm.
Steelers fan, so I've seen over the last several years that you don't have to do that with the first round pick. You don't need to
Yep.
invest that draft capital in the first round in a wide
Mhm.
receiver. There's so much value to be had later in the draft with guys like Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool for the Steelers. Those guys were
Yep.
not first round picks, and all of a
Nope.
sudden they're some of the better wide receivers in the league.
Exactly. I'm a Steelers fan too, so trust me, I know. I know the grind.
Exactly. So you can appreciate the fact that a lot of times we're not getting these flashy guys. So
Oh,
actually,
yeah.
now that you were mentioning that you are a Steelers fan, this brings me to my next bet. Steelers to take a first round quarterback plus
Oh,
190. So I don't know.
that
I don't know how much of this is hopium that I am sort of
oh,
huffing as a Steelers fan, and how much of this is a real tangible thing that the Steelers are going to do. I look around that roster and I see one of the more complete rosters in the league with a lack of depth. And I like Mitch Trubisky for his whatever limited upside he may have as a bridge QB. But
mhm.
I think they've put together a situation now where they're not pressured to take a quarterback. But if
Yeah.
they are in a position to take a guy they really like, I think they're going to do it.
Absolutely. So, this is a text I literally sent out today to my buddy who is a scouting director in the NFL. So I asked him, "Is Pittsburgh in play for a quarterback?" I assume yes, and if so, who would they be looking for? Howell or Pickett, or Howell or Willis, or Ritter Pickett type? And then he said, "I'm not sure." I'm assume yes, as well as it's been tough to figure out that teams will likely will actually get the target that they're looking for, unlike in recent years. So I'm going to say buy,
Okay.
but the real question is who is going to be there. And there's a sneaky target if the Steelers actually want to move back at draft capital, Sam Howell at the end of the first.
Okay.
Some teams have him as QB2 or 3, and he's kind of the forgotten man of the bunch. So it's a way to gain draft capital, get defensive backs per se, and then still also address a position where you develop them for a year.
And you are somebody who makes sort of some of this draft content. So how do
Mhm.
you view Sam Howell as a prospect?
He used my quarterback 2, and
Interesting.
he graded out as my quarterback 1, but grading scales get tweaked over time.
Interesting.
So
So what was it about Sam Howell that sort of stuck out to you, and what do you see that a lot of people I think are overlooking?
yeah, so he's extremely consistent with his ball placement. That's something that a lot of quarterbacks don't exactly do anymore. He's very well built for his size. Obviously, like Matt Corral's my former high school quarterback, but like Matt is a much thinner build. You see that when he plays. He plays with the same aggressiveness, but he doesn't have the body frame to hold up to it. Sam Howell has a strong arm, big body. He can run the ball as well. That just allows him to have a higher platform. And then, he's so young as well. 3 years starting, and he's still just a true junior, the youngest quarterback, I believe, in the draft class, especially of the top group. So definitely adds a lot to his value overall. And his decision making honestly wasn't that terrible, even though his system didn't really allow him to make that many decisions.
Interesting. So who was your quarterback one in this draft class?
It was Malik. It
Okay.
was yeah. Like
And
again, graded wise, it was Sam, but Malik can take the cake.
and what was that for? Was that because of those like traits that you some of these guys just are not exhibiting here? That just the ceiling is higher?
So even though Malik is a little bit older, we also have to remember that he's only started for 2 years. So I mean, again, you don't have that football impact injury rating. Like his body's still younger, and he has an amazing. He's great as a leader. That's a huge thing. Like you have to be good in the locker room, otherwise you're going to get your rear kicked out. He's coachable, has all the physical talents you could want, and he has a great enough arm where he can hit the very tight window throws. And some of the throws are just they're Josh Allen esque. So when people are saying that at the start of the year, I was talking about rookie Josh Allen as my comp for him. Not a terrible comp in the moment.
Now that sort of brings me to another bet that I was looking at in the first round.
Mhm.
Over 2.5 quarterbacks taken in the first round.
I'm going to say over.
You're
Just
going to say
because
the
I
over.
know that Malik and Kenny are pretty much lock ones from everybody I hear. And then that 32nd overall pick, at least, not to mention potentially the Steelers as well. You see the Saints in there. I I would say almost buy if it was 3.5 over.
Yeah. That
Like
that line
it's
was sort of fishy to me when I first saw it because I was
yeah.
with you. I see there's almost no version of this draft where there's not at least 3 guys taken in the first round. Whether
Yeah.
it's some of these back half of the first round teams sort of looking
Mhm.
for a quarterback of the future. Then I could also see the argument against it in like teams like the Lions, who people may be thinking are looking to get somebody a quarterback. The
Yep.
Lions could very easily look at their roster, say we're still a year away anyways, and
Mhm.
Goff was pretty goddamn good at the second half of last year. He was his passing stats were very comparable to Kyler Murray, who was a guy who was
Mhm.
about to make $50 million a year. So even
Yep.
though I don't buy Goff necessarily as a franchise guy, you can sort of see that logic taking hold among some other teams with a little like, oh, we can go wait another year, come back for a better quarterback draft next year, and
Yeah.
sort of approach it from that perspective.
Definitely. I mean, the only problem is if you actually draft with legitimate logic and realize that these quarterbacks aren't going to be legit impact players and know that maybe Desmond Ritter could be there in the second round or something like that, then that's when you could start trying to say the under. But the NFL is not logical. They're
Yeah,
impulsive. They're sitting there on the clock. They have no idea what the hell the other teams are going to do. So they do what they want rather than what's probably best at the pick. So
absolutely.
definitely over.